Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Jake Williams Show, episode 29. I am your host, Jake Williams, joined for the first time on this show by Andrew Gomez. Say hello.
How's it going?
Awkward pause.
Yep. I got to get that finger cue next time.
I brought Andrew on because, well, I call him Gomez. That's his real name. I brought Gomez on because there's a continuing issue in the United States with vaccinations and anti-vaxxers, and I thought Gomez knows stuff. I'll have him on the show because he's a registered nurse. So better him to talk about this than me, and I'll just kind of let him have the show. But he had a different question that's very important. And Gomez, what was it you wanted to share with me?
Well, so I'm in the middle of buying a house, and I'm trying to figure out if this is a potentially weird situation. My grandma is moving into an assisted living facility and maybe selling me her house super cheap, like $40,000 less than the houses in that neighborhood sell. So it's a great deal, just needs a little updating. But is it weird that my grandpa passed away in that house to live there?
The funny thing about this is that dramatic pause because you were like, well, it's a great deal, but, and then you lay this down that, oh, my grandpa died in this house.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think, if you're okay with your dead grandpa haunting you every night, I would say go for it.
Well, see, the benefit is it's not in the room that I would use as my bedroom, so that's like a caveat. Like, does it make it a little better?
Honestly, that does. I'm okay with it. It
All right.
doesn't bother me, but I
Hmm.
don't really believe in ghosts, so that's something you got to worry about.
See, I do. I don't fuck with that shit, but
Uh,
yeah.
by the way, you're the third ever guest on the show.
Oh, and then what?
Well, Tommy and Luke did this an episode together, so you're the first solo interview
There we go.
on the show. Pretty
Okay.
exciting stuff. So yeah, you and I have talked about this a lot before. How I'm dating someone in the medical field. I have friends that are in the medical field, so I'm educated on
More than the average
vaccinations.
person.
Yeah, and I know the importance of vaccinations.
Right.
More so than probably somebody that doesn't know people like that. But my thing is, why do you think people think they know more than a doctor with this stuff?
I think you're seeing with a lot of other social trends nowadays is that people think they know themselves best, and I think it's a changing social issue where it's like people don't want to be told what to do by anyone, or they think they know themselves best, which
Right.
nine times out of 10 they absolutely do. In situations like that, an individual does know who they are best. But you're seeing all sorts of changes with that, and I think it's an increasing trend that we're not listening to medical professionals because we don't feel that that's correct.
Right. And I do think you kind of hit a nail on the head there. I think that from what I've seen, the people that I know that are anti-vaxxers and people that it's so hard to convince them because I think it is a thing where it's freedoms. I think that's the issue is as Americans, we cling on to freedom so much and we don't want, be told what to do. But I don't think that should be an issue, right? I think that is professionals telling you this is how you should take care of your body.
Right.
It's advice to be like, hey, do you want to die from something that we have
Clearly taken eradicated.
Yes, taking like measles. If you want measles, an archaic disease, fine, but it's crazy to me.
Well, it's just interesting because 30, 40, 50 years ago, especially in, granted, this might be more of a small town thing, but like your small town doctor or anyone like that was a highly trusted individual, and you sought out their advice and you pretty much always listened to it because they were educated. They took years to study these things. They were, someone you sought guidance from for various situations. And now I feel like vaccinations and even medical professionals are associated with like big pharma and big government. And I think that's a really big misunderstanding. That's another big social movement right now, is that like, especially right now with the political shifts that I think are going on, people are not a fan of anything that they can associate with big government and, the rich getting richer. And so I think that big pharma falls into that a lot, which one thing that people don't understand is these vaccinations, they're all government subsidies. The government is basically making them break even. They're not allowed to profit on vaccinations. And the profit, I shouldn't say they're not allowed to profit, but their profits are incredibly minimal. It maybe accounts for 2 or 3% of their overall actual income that they're making. So really, they're pretty much breaking even on producing vaccinations. It's literally a government like subsidy. It's a government like contract that they have to produce these vaccinations.
Yeah. And I was gonna actually bring that up. I was gonna say it's extremely, so they can't make money off of it. So
Very little, yeah.
very, very little. So and that's why you see like Walgreens and places like that that do like and do free flu shots, and that's what brings it back to you. I think you're right that it is, people make this connection that, and they're not completely wrong. I think there are instances where I think big pharma has too many lobbyists, and
Well, yeah. Now, I mean, like the guys that created insulin, they sold the patent to make it more widely available for like $1 a piece. The two guys that did it, and now insulin sells for like $300 to $500 a bottle a month.
mm-hmm.
I mean, so big pharma absolutely. Look at the guy that just went to jail for the EpiPens. He was charging like $600, $600 or $700 for 2 EpiPens, which is nothing. I mean, it's a lot of money for very little product.
Who was the dude who was a douchebag and he bought the HIV medicine?
I think it's the same guy from the EpiPens. I'd have to look it up though.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, his company bought up a few other like patents to products and basically increased the price by like 1,000% on random stuff, like life threat or life essential medication.
So I'm glad we're talking about it this way, because I level with them a little bit where I can understand why there is distrust amongst the medical field and big pharma and those things, because at times things like that happen. And I understand, but I don't think there would be any money in vaccinations. Like, because of what you said about the government and everything, what would be the point to sell vaccinations that way?
Right. And another thing, like, if they were trying to make money, they just wouldn't make the vaccinations if it wasn't going to do anything.
Right.
Because the medical industry makes money off of sick people. I mean, that's how we work. In a very crude sense of the way, like it's more.
Well, yeah, you're healers, so you have to take in sick people, to operate.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know. I think just a lot has really reoccurred. Is was it late '90s, early 2000s when the first vaccine or first studies came out showing that vaccines produced autism or linked to autism.
Which, I think that. Let me just kill that right now, because that's not true.
Well, right, there was another study that was done recently that showed that like it was like 500,000 or 600,000 children received vaccinations, and like none of them had any association with autism. Like none of them developed autism within like 18 years of their life.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not something that's statistically proven. And even still, I mean, I think the question that you see a lot, and the question I 100% agree with, is whether or not are you more afraid of a child with autism than a child that makes it to the age of 8?
Yeah, exactly. I think, on that basis, when you put it that way, it's insulting to parents that have, children with autism. And I agree, that's just silly. I mean, are you going to love your child less because of that? because you don't look like a good person when you're trying to. I don't know. I understand the idea of like, oh, I don't want something to happen to my child, but it's not. I, you're born with autism, right? Isn't that the case?
Right. Right. I
So
mean, they still have 100 for sure, like 100% for sure on the cause, but I mean, there's a lot of factors that are associated with it, but it's not associated with vaccinations. It's associated with, like you said, like birth and child development.
right, and that's what blows my mind every time that argument comes up. Is it's just like that's just not how this works. It's that I don't understand it. I don't understand
Well,
the whole movement, and it's I'm doing my best to not get too emotionally angry about it, but it's
right,
hard when I know the truth is in the numbers and the data, and I could show that to someone, they just won't accept it.
right. It's kind of almost like it almost feels like, I don't know, like a moral relativism thing. Like just because it's right for you doesn't mean it's right for me thing, which
Right.
is kind of amazing when like it's something like you said, it's like it's a fact. It's just there. You know, you can't dispute it. And if I remember correctly, it was started by a woman, and she wrote a book, and that's where it was originally released. And then it was either based on a study by a physician, but I do remember that that physician lost his license after this happened. Like after his study was clearly debunked and like disproven, and I thought we squashed this thing a long time ago, but it seems to make a recurring cycle every couple of years where it kicks back up. I see a
Yeah.
new increase in the anti-vax movement, and
It really started to take off when Jenny McCarthy got behind it,
right, yeah, Jenny McCarthy, thank you.
which it makes me laugh because if that's who you were referring to, I don't even think she wrote a book, to be honest with you. I
It
don't
is
know.
it is who I'm referring to. She wrote something, or maybe it was just articles,
Yeah.
or
I just know that she is like the biggest. I don't know if she still is, but she was definitely like the biggest anti-vaxxer.
mhm,
She's the one who kind of brought it mainstream, which is hilarious to me because it's Jenny McCarthy who like was a Playboy playmate
right.
and dated Jim Carrey. That's pretty much all she did, and like occasionally guest spotted on TV or movies. Like she never
So
had a
she,
starring role. She never was a big name, but she just comes up with this anti-vaxxer stuff.
I mean,
Um, oh, go ahead.
well, no, it's just amazing that like people listen to like social icons rather than people who have developed or like
Hmm.
devoted their entire life to studying these things and took time to years to research and understand these items. And a social icon can start a movement faster than a physician can, or a medical professional.
Hmm.
It's just kind of interesting, and there's just a lot of new things coming out. And I think a lot of it also is that you're also starting to see talks of mandatory vaccination. And I think that also freaks people out because it just kind of fits with the social movements that are going on that I know best. And you can't tell me what to do, which,
Hmm.
9 times out of 10, I 100% agree with. You can't, government shouldn't be able to limit what we can do or what we have to do. So I 100% agree with the way they feel, but then they don't understand the public health safety risk with it. Like
Right.
a new law that's taking a lot of heat right now is Italy actually just passed a law banning unvaccinated children from preschools,
Wow.
which is
I heard. I thought I heard about that. Yeah. Which I don't know. Again, as people who are pro vaccinations, uh, we in a certain way we don't see an issue with that, but you can't take away people's freedoms. Like,
I mean, you can if it's a health risk. I mean, I think people they have this
so, yeah.
I mean, people have this misconception that there are these exemptions, and the exemptions are becoming more limited. So you used to be able to not, or there are certain types of exemptions. You can do it, not vaccinate your child based off religious reasons or medical reasons. And a lot of states are actually getting rid of the religious exemptions because basically it was just like a made up exemption. If you just
Right.
didn't want your child to be vaccinated, you
Yeah.
didn't have to.
Yeah. My
And
religion is
then,
against it. It's super easy to say. So I
right.
do appreciate that they've changed that. Yeah.
But they're actually getting, a lot of states are removing that exemption and limiting it to um, medical exemptions, which is what those things are designed for. And I don't think people understand that there's something called herd immunity,
Hmm.
which herd immunity basically says a certain percentage of the population has to be vaccinated in order for the vaccinations to actually work, because it helps to block the transmission, the spread of the particular virus that we're trying to prevent, or particular disease that we're trying to prevent the spread of. And so the herd immunity protects those that cannot get vaccinated due to medical reasons.
Okay.
So, somebody who is unable to get vaccinated is still safe because I chose to vaccinate myself or my children. It's there to protect them and us.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I try to stress when I talk to people about this. It's like it to me it is selfish because you're not only hurting your child, but you're hurting someone. You could be possibly hurting someone else's child.
Right. I mean, really, and that's who you're protecting. Not only yourself, but you're protecting those um, who can't protect themselves.
Mm-hmm. And it's going to end. It's going to be an endless cycle of bad. I mean, just look at Washington.
Right.
Washington State. They while we were dealing with a polar vortex in the Midwest, they were dealing with a measles outbreak, and it is getting worse there.
Right. We're seeing cases of previously eradicated diseases. I'm trying to look up the stats right now. In the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
I
Polio is making a comeback.
right, which is amazing. Like, this is something that we have totally like removed, and now you know now there was 29 reported cases. I mean,
Yeah, that to me is what's very frustrating. Is these are things that are completely 100% avoidable, and
right,
people don't understand that these. And you can speak more to this, but it's a thing where these things can evolve, right? They can mutate, right? And
right.
adapt.
Which is a lot of people's like gripe with the flu vaccine. So the flu vaccine every year is generally they pick the top 3 or 4 most common strains, or strains they believe will be the most common strains for that upcoming flu season, and they create a vaccination tailored to those. But there's you know countless numbers of strains, hundreds of strains of the flu vaccine, or like you just said, it can change on a moment. It can change change on a dime,
Right.
and then that vaccine is not as effective as if
Right.
it were. So
But
these
I
things do
think,
change.
but the way I'm trying to talk about this, I guess, is the reasons measles and polio is coming back is because did the sickness find a way
No, it's a drop in vaccination
to
in
drop in it?
percentages.
Right.
It's
That's
because
what I
like
was
it.
trying to get at. Was
Oh,
I think I went the wrong direction there. But what I think worked though, that is a argument to vaccinations, is that what I was saying, that these sicknesses can mutate, right?
right. They can.
But you just said that there's tons and tons of strains of the flu shot, right? There are
Right.
vaccinations for it. So we're still able to get in front of it, even if it does mutate.
Right. I mean, they look at the like genetic makeup and like the specific characteristics of each strain, and then they try to tailor it the best they can. But like, really, a lot of these vaccines for some of these diseases that have been eradicated haven't really changed in a long time. They might change like fillers, which is another thing that a lot of people have issues with. Like, you used to see like mercury derivatives in vaccines. That's not something you see anymore. Or any type of um, chemicals that you might see that could cause harmful effects to children, or birth defects. Like, they're either not present in the vaccines anymore, or they're at such low levels that you probably get them in your drinking water or your daily life anyway. Like, it's just not going to affect you because it's at
Sure.
such a small level.
Well, this I don't know if this was an actual argument, but I saw a post about um, anti-vaccinations, and one of the something about a flu shot, and
Mm-hmm.
I shared an article that said like the most common myths about the flu shot and whatever. And then I got an exchange with a couple other people, and this other guy said, "Well, I never had the flu shot and I never got the flu." That is a flimsy argument because
Right.
you just got lucky.
Yeah. I've gotten the flu shot every year and I've never had the flu.
But there's nothing wrong with taking that precaution, right? There's
Well, right. And I think people don't understand is that, like, not only does it like help you fight the flu, but it lessens the severity of it in a sense. You know,
so you're not going to be puking your guts out in the toilet for 4 days. It might be a couple
well,
days or
not only
something like
that, but
that.
actually, like the influenza A is it's actually a respiratory issue rather than like the typical stomach flu. So
Okay.
that's a kind of a common misconception that the flu is a only a stomach bug. It's actually a respiratory issue too.
Yeah. And
Um,
there's so many different, and like you were just talking about, there's thousands of variations of the sickness. And
right,
it's just, I don't know. To have that mentality, it's like saying you're going into a war and saying, "Well, I never got shot in the war, didn't." So
right,
nobody died, right? Like it's kind of that mentality to me, where it's like,
right. Or it's like saying, "Oh, I don't need a bulletproof vest. I've never been shot."
exactly, that's a better
Analogy.
analogy there. Couldn't think of that word either. It's been a long day.
I know,
I just
but
it might be 5 in the afternoon, but I just woke up not that long ago either. So
yeah,
both
same.
of
I just
us
got
are
off a
working
night
the night
shift.
shift.
It's just I don't know. I think really the thing that people are struggling with right now is just government control, and I think it's a social norm. So I think somehow we have to find a new way to either like I think it's a branding problem.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Uh, because I think people are feeling like the government is telling them what to do, which is not something it should be able to do.
Hmm.
So I think the government has to find a way to rebrand what we need because it is a public health issue, or like kind of on the same level as the fluoride in the water debate. Like, is it helping you? Is it giving you cancer? Like it was a government choice that we all have to live with for the most part.
I do like that you brought that up because I think that's the big issue with society right now. I think we focus way too much on branding and we don't and like you were saying, we listen to celebrities and we don't listen to medical professionals. And it's almost like a lose-lose because then when you have celebrities speaking out and saying no, vaccinate your kids, then people think it's like an elite thing.
Right.
So I don't know how you figure that out. Maybe you get somebody like Roseanne or Tim Allen and have them say they're pro-vaccination for people that might be right wing, so and don't think they're elite. You know what I mean?
All right.
And
You know
that's
what?
and look, that's not a political thing. That's not an attack in the right wing. I'm just saying get somebody that would appeal more to conservatives or people that are more blue collar. You know what I mean?
Right. I don't think that'd be an issue either. But I mean, another, yeah, because I think on the other side, like if you look at the branding for anti-vax movements, it's so easy to create scare tactics. Like, or another really common one that not even about just how bad vaccinations are, but is that you see like a baby doll with like all like 100 shots in it. And it's basically saying your child gets this many shots around birth, which your kid gets a lot of shots, but it's over like this 18 months,
Yeah.
if not farther. People don't understand that like, yes, your child gets a lot of shots. Yes, this is how it works, and it does look scary when you put all of these needles in your baby, but people don't understand that this is over a long period of time. It's not like we just start poking your baby right as it's born.
And I think the best way to describe it is, look, you are taking something
Yeah.
that is coming into an ecosystem that its body has no idea what it's about because for 9 months this thing lived inside another body, so it's not used to all this stuff.
Right.
And how else are you going to make sure that thing lives properly. You have to vaccinate it because the body hasn't built up immunities, and it's not. And it's literally coming into a completely different ecosystem from living in another, and that is a drastic change for
Right.
any living organism.
Well, and it just sucks because there is some, well, not there is some, there is a type of immunity that your child has for like the first roughly 6 months of its life that comes from like its mom, and then it starts building its own like immune system, and there's a lot of science behind it. So like it's really hard because you see people with that same argument that like, oh, my baby doesn't need this because I pass on part of my immune system when it's born and then it develops on its own. Or you'll see people that show like children are developing asthma at higher rates because we live in like clean societies. So like it just sucks when you're seeing like all these other things that are not associated with it at all.
Yeah, and I think I think that's the most frustrating thing that I try to put out there, and that's something that I have issues, like when I argue about climate change, which that's a whole different episode. Um, Science is not relative. Science is evidence. Science is proof. Like I don't think people comprehend the scientific method, which
No.
which is exactly that. You come up with something crazy, you have a theory, you work it out, and you're like, "Oh, I was wrong." That or I was right. That's how science is.
Right, and the whole thing is it has to be repeatable. It has to be able to be tested again. Somebody has to be able to come in and check your work and get the same result as you in a sense.
Yeah, it's like
But
math and science are similar, or very same thing. There is
right,
evidence.
right. But another problem that we also see is everybody's a keyboard scientist now. Just like I can write a science article, but am I really a scientific expert in this? Like what true credentials do I have to be able to say this is 100% how this works or this is what it is? People are mistaking opinion pieces for scientific fact because they come from somebody who's in the scientific field, or anybody that just looks like they know what they're talking about becomes a scientist or a doctor. I can go on my computer and in 30 seconds find thousands of articles about how vaccinations are bad.
Mm-hmm.
But are
Well, and
people going to take time to read those opinion pieces or something that's not truly rooted in science? Or are they going to take the time to look at a research article produced by a truly academic and medical team,
right, and that's another issue too that we have. It's all clickbait. It's somebody sees a headline of like why you shouldn't vaccinate your kids or something like that, something sensational. They're gonna click on it because it's like,
Right.
oh yeah, maybe the government's lying to me and all this stuff. Um, and I was just gonna say that's what bothers me about conspiracy theories like this and things that are just not true is people that are in the medical field, they dedicate years and years and years of their life, and you're going to discredit that because somebody wrote a clickbait article.
Right. It's a total scare factor. It's just not really, it's not there, it's not a really basic thing, just like kind of like a general rule of thumb is what I've passed on to people is that when you're looking for scientific proof, it takes time. It's kind of hard to find what's really there. But what I tell them is look at the ending of a website before you like really get involved. Not to discredit .coms, but I generally say as a rule of thumb, look at a site that ends in .edu or .org, and you are generally more often than not probably on a
Yeah,
more accurate website. Not to say that's not 100% true all the time. I would just say it's a general rule of thumb.
I was gonna say that as well. That yeah, not all .coms like that, but you're right. You if you really want true like hard information, you have to go to those sites and yeah, you do more research. You find that .com, see if you can find more about it, and then you'll find out who's funding it, and then
Right.
you'll find out, oh, this is a such and such lobby for this vaccination or whatever it may be,
Right.
or this
And
drug that will say that this drug doesn't work. Things like that happen all the time in the medical field, right?
and I also think it doesn't help that like recently, another thing that's going on is we just had something come out about one of the last like was it the physician or somebody that was associated with the Tuskegee, gosh, I can't say Tuskegee Airmen syphilis trial thing
Oh yeah.
just come out, and so now that's fresh in everyone's mind, which that was a huge medical blunder. It was not done
That
right.
that was awful. That
Oh, it
should
was terrible.
that is an outlier. That is something that was grossly inappropriate and should never have happened.
Right, 100% agree, and I don't know how that did happen, but it did, and it just sucks that that is something that will harm the medical community irreparably even today.
Mm-hmm.
It burns a lot of our credibility.
And yeah, that's just what's unfortunate about human nature is we think so much about what's happening right now, and we think so much about being in the current time, even though that happened years and years ago. But like you said, it's now back in the front, in the spotlight, and people think too. They don't think far enough ahead, and they think too much behind or right now, and that I think is the biggest problem.
Right. And it's just, it's amazing. Like I was talking about this to somebody the other day. I was talking about organizations like the WHO, the World Health Organizations, and even our CDC. It's like these are organizations that are, their whole job is designed to protect and educate the public about the things that are out there, that to help create educational material and help to further medical advancements to help keep the public safe and the world safe.
Mm-hmm.
And people just blatantly don't listen. Like I was talking to this one person, they firmly believe that the WHO and the CDC are working together to just help fund some, almost Illuminati level
George
conspiracy.
Soros.
And it was just amazing to see that, like, how quickly this person was able to almost try, how quickly they were to tear down these organizations without really knowing what they do or
like,
how they work.
It's like when people think the moon landing doesn't exist and NASA lies to us. And I don't think that, as corrupt as the government can be and how bad we think the government can be sometimes, I don't think the government would have institutions exist to not keep us alive and keep the country moving, because it's going to sound really cynical and morbid, but they want people alive so they can spend money. This
I
is
mean, that's
a
one way to live.
capitalistic free market society. That's what we want. We want you to live so you can keep spending your money.
Right. Well, another thing is people don't look at other trends. I mean, they are keeping us alive. Like, look at our mortality rate; it's going up, or not? Excuse me, our life expectancy is going up.
Right.
It's so strange. As these medical advancements come out, we live longer. You don't die. You're not a full-grown adult at the age of 12 with a family anymore.
I think that argument might have helped anti-vaxxers there when I said the government just wants to keep you alive to spend money, but it's true. It's true.
It's just, I don't know. I think it's just a lot of, we're going through a really big change in our society right now, and our society just needs to, our government needs to find a way to help create a movement that is not so hostile or jarring to people right now.
And because well, I think, again, I got to go back and say that I do understand where anti-vaxxers think that things have become too politicized, because they have.
They have 100%.
And there's too much money in it. I totally agree. But we have to have this, to me, is like, talk about how divided we are. This should be the easiest bipartisan agreement of
100%. This isn't, it's not a political, no. It's not a profit. It's not a mandatory. I mean, it shouldn't be thought of as a mandatory thing. It's, people talk about like how we need to live in a, people talk about like a big movement right now. I feel like is very socialist and like taking care of the poor, taking care, like you see all this like, but like, and that's the thing that blows my mind is then people look at like vaccinations as a profit idea and that it's, feeding big government, big pharma. And I'm like, no, it's really actually, it is a kind of a socialist idea in the sense that you are protecting little Jimmy down the street that can't get vaccinated. Like you are doing a public service by vaccinating yourself, your children, and helping those who medically and actually just cannot. It's the same as, me increasing my taxes by a few percent to take care of the people who cannot take care of themselves, or funding public health care. It is a socialist movement, and it's a good one. I know. I mean, that might not be the best way to describe it, but it's kind of the basic idea of it. You know, that like
Here's here's
you're doing a public service.
here's the best. I think you nailed it. Like that was perfect. I think that is what it needs to be framed at. It is a public service that we all can agree to say, hey, let's not let measles have a comeback. Let's not let polio have a comeback. Let's not let each other get sick because of laziness. You know,
Right.
it's a way to say I'm investing that, and I can trust you that you are going to take care of yourself, and I'm going to take care of myself. You know, I that's the way I think the best way to look at it instead of looking at it like because I've been one of those people that said you're an idiot if you're an anti-vaxxer.
Right. Everybody
But
has those rash moments.
right, and that's not a way to reach out to these people. This is I think is the best way to reach out to these people and say, "Hey, it seems kind of scary and I know, you can not trust the government or whatever, but just get vaccinated and vaccinate your kids because it is going to make we have enough bad stuff to deal with. Nebraska, well, when we're recording this, Nebraska's underwater. We've got all this stuff going on with the border, all like a bomb cyclone, all this terrible stuff that happens to us on a daily basis. Let's not let this be another thing.
Let's take care of one of the few things we can actually 100% control. We are
Exactly.
not 100%, but can pretty much control and eradicate.
Exactly. It is 100% avoidable.
Right.
And
And
that's
then
not to say that you're not going to get sick. People get sick. It happens.
that's life, yeah. But it's just really unfortunate to see how polarized this issue is, and now you'll see people that are pro-vaccination and anti-vaxxers. Like I have a few of each on my Facebook. I know some from both worlds, and it's amazing at just how angry people are on both sides of this issue, which I understand. But people aren't taking the time to find a way to meet in the middle or how to rationalize the conversation, and nobody really wants to come to the table right now in any issue in our society. And I think that's why I say it's a branding issue. It just needs to be changed and talked about differently.
Right. And that's what I had that realization while we were having this conversation. That we have to find a better way to reach out to people. And there's so much anger going on right now in our country that we got to stress to be better and communicate.
Right.
And so when I have these moments when I want to just yell at somebody on Facebook, I have to stop and think, no, how do I reach them? And
right.
That goes with anything in life anymore, man. That's just how we have to communicate with each other.
Right. People think if you don't agree, then you hate them or hate the issue, and it's just not something that's true.
Yeah, my Uncle Mike, I argue with on Facebook all the time, and I love and respect that guy. I'll never say I don't love him and think he's a great uncle.
Right.
But I think we pretty much covered everything for anti-vaxxers. Thank you for coming on the show. I love talking about this stuff. Maybe we can down the road have another medical themed episode that we can talk about. We got a lot. We're actually going to be, you and I are going to be very busy in the next few weeks. So this was nice to just have a chat with not worrying about all the stuff we have to do. Thank you so much for listening to this show. You can follow us on social media at Loud Opinionated on Twitter, Facebook, Loud and Opinionated, and on Instagram, Loud and Opinionated Brand. You can listen to the other shows on Loud and Opinionated. You should do that. And most importantly, even if you're an anti-vaxxer, be loud and be proud.